You know, my dear ones, sometimes silence can be the loudest sound in the world. It's peaceful until it isn't. This story comes from deep in the green heart of Queensland, from a quiet little place called Amamoor. By day, it's a paradise of tall gums, crystal water, and sunlight that dances through the leaves. But when night falls, that beauty changes. The bush becomes something ancient, something that listens. In the spring of 2014, 3 friends, Terrence, Mark, and Liam, decided to escape city life for a weekend of camping. They wanted stars instead of streetlights, campfire smoke instead of car exhaust, and silence instead of traffic. They drove north from Brisbane until the paved road faded into gravel, and then into nothing but a narrow dirt track. No phone signal, no sound except for the crunch of tires and the rustle of trees closing in around them. When they finally found a clearing beside a small creek, it felt perfect. The air was cool and sweet. The water glimmered like glass under the setting Sunday. "Mate, this is paradise," Mark said. "No one but us out here," Liam replied with a grin. They set up camp, lit a small fire, cooked sausages, and laughed until the sky turned black and full of stars. The forest hummed with life, frogs croaking, crickets singing, the creek whispering softly. It was everything they'd hoped for. Then, suddenly, it wasn't. All at once, the night went silent. No frogs, no crickets, not even the whisper of wind. Just silence so heavy they could hear the fire breathing. Terrence looked around. "You guys hear that?" Mark chuckled. "Hear what?" "That's just it," Terrence whispered. "I don't hear anything." They listened. The forest was frozen. Liam tried to sound casual. "Probably a dingo nearby. Happens all the time." But his eyes flicked toward the trees. Then it came a loud splash from the creek. Huge. Deep. Like someone had thrown a boulder into the water. The 3 of them jumped to their feet. "What the hell was that?" Mark shouted. Terrence's flashlight cut across the surface. The water rippled wildly, but there was no movement, no shape, nothing there. "That wasn't a fish," Terrence said quietly. The ripples slowed. The silence returned, and none of them spoke another word that night. Later, in their tents, Terrence lay awake. The air felt thick. Every small sound seemed distant. Then, from somewhere near the creek, he heard whispering. Soft, faint, almost like a conversation underwater. He held his breath. "Liam?" he called softly. No answer. The voices stopped as suddenly as they had begun. He waited, eyes open wide, until exhaustion finally pulled him into uneasy sleep. The next morning, the forest looked innocent again. Birds sang, the creek laughed, and sunlight painted everything gold. They laughed it off, cooked breakfast, and decided to explore upstream. About 100 meters from camp, they found an old fire pit. Rusted cans, a broken chair, half buried in the dirt was a melted flashlight and a torn bit of blue tent fabric. "Guess someone camped here before us," Terrence said. Liam shrugged. "Probably years ago, but the ground around it was strange flattened, the grass dead and gray, as if something heavy had sat there for a long time." That evening, as the light began to fade again, the forest grew quiet early, too early. The same heavy silence. The 3 men sat close to the fire, eyes fixed on the dark line of trees. "Don't move," Terrence said softly. "Just listen." Minutes passed. Nothing. Then came a dragging sound. Slow, steady, like someone pulling a branch through shallow water. Mark whispered, "What is that?" No one answered. The sound grew louder, closer, then stopped. The fire popped once, and at that moment, Terrence thought he heard something behind him. A single breath. They turned around just as the fire suddenly flared high, flames leaping into the air, and for a split second, in the light, they saw it. A figure standing by the edge of the creek. Pale. Still. Arms too long, head tilted slightly to the side, like it was watching them. Then the fire dimmed, and it was gone. They didn't wait. They packed their things in silence, threw their tents in the truck, and drove out as dawn began to rise. No one spoke for the entire drive back to Brisbane. When Terrence unpacked his tent at home, he found something inside the bag, a handful of wet gravel. Smooth creek stones. He hadn't packed them. One flat piece had a strange mark scratched into it. A crescent with a single line through it. He meant to show it to his friends, but the next day, it was gone. Weeks later, he came across an old local article about a camper who had vanished near Amamoor Creek back in the 1980 seconds. The photo of the abandoned campsite showed a stone beside the missing man's tent, with that same strange marking. Terrence never camped again. He said later that silence in the bush is different. It doesn't just mean peace. It means the forest is listening. You see, my dear ones, nature has its ways of warning us. When the frogs go quiet, when the wind stops moving, when the night feels too still, listen, but don't look. Because some silences are not meant to be broken. Some places are quiet because they're forgotten. Others are quiet because they want to be. And if you ever find yourself camping near a lonely creek in Amamoor and the forest goes still, pack up. Don't wait for dawn. Just leave. Because the forest remembers. And sometimes it calls back the ones who never left. Life is full of mysteries, my dear ones. But remember, respect the quiet, and it will respect you. Listen too closely, and sometimes the quiet will start listening back. I went camping in the Victorian high country 2 years ago. If you've ever been there, you know how empty it feels. Miles of forest, mist, and no phone signal for hours. I went alone. I'd done solo trips before, nothing new for me. But this one felt different from the start. On the first night, I set up camp near Wanangata River. It was quiet, too quiet. Not even frogs or birds after dark. I cooked dinner, watched the fire, and went to bed early. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up. Something was whistling outside. It wasn't a tune, just one long, flat note, low and slow. It stopped after a few seconds. Then it came again, closer. I froze inside my sleeping bag, trying not to move. It felt like someone was standing right next to my tent. I didn't sleep again that night. When the sun came up, I went outside. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. In the dirt beside my tent was a small black button. It wasn't mine. It was clean, like someone had just placed it there. I told myself it meant nothing. Maybe it fell off my shirt. Maybe it was already there. I ignored it. That night, I made a bigger fire. The air felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. Around midnight, I started hearing clicking sounds. 2 short clicks. Pause. 2 more. I turned off my flashlight and listened. The sound moved from one side of my camp to the other, like something circling me. When I finally worked up the courage to shine my torch, nothing was there. No footprints. No movement. Just trees and fog. The next morning, I found 2 more buttons in the same spot as before, neatly lined up beside each other. That's when I started to feel watched. I decided to leave that day. While I packed my gear, I saw movement up the ridge. Someone was standing there, tall, thin, wearing brown clothes that blended into the trees. At first, I thought it was another camper, but he wasn't carrying a pack. He was just standing still, looking down at me. I waved. He didn't move. After a few seconds, he tilted his head to the side like he was studying me. Then he stepped backward into the trees and vanished. I threw everything into my car and drove out fast. When I finally hit reception, I called a ranger station. The ranger didn't sound surprised. He said, "You probably saw the button man." I asked what he meant. He told me people had been reporting strange encounters for years. Campers waking up to find buttons, coins, or little trinkets left near their tents. Sometimes they'd hear tapping on trees. Sometimes they'd see a man watching from a distance. No one had ever caught him. No one knew who he was. A few people had gone missing out there too. Experienced campers. Their tents found untouched. Their cars still parked, but no sign of them. Every story had one thing in common. Someone left small items around their campsite before they disappeared. I didn't believe it was connected until last year. A couple of hikers went missing near the same valley. Search teams found their camp, and in the dirt outside the tent were 3 black buttons, laid in a perfect triangle. That's when I stopped camping alone, and I've never gone back to the high country since. Because out there, where no one can hear you, you start to realize something. You're not the only one who likes the silence, and sometimes the silence likes you back. I had been planning this solo trip for months. Just me, a backpack, and a small cabin deep in the woods. No phone reception, no neighbors, nothing but trees stretching as far as I could see. I arrived late afternoon. The cabin was old, made of dark wood, but sturdy. It smelled faintly of smoke and damp, exactly the kind of place I was hoping for. After unpacking, I built a small fire outside. The sun was low, brushing the tops of the trees in gold. Shadows stretched long between the trunks. The first night was quiet, too quiet. I couldn't hear a single animal. No birds, no insects, no wind. It felt unnatural. I tried to sleep, but around 2 a.m., I woke up. The floorboards creaked outside my door. Slow, deliberate steps. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old wood can make strange noises. Then, I heard breathing. Low, uneven. Right outside my door. I froze, holding my breath. The breathing stopped. Then, a soft knock. 1, 2, 3. Pauses in between, like someone was testing the door. I grabbed a flashlight and opened it. Nothing. No footprints. No one in sight. I checked the surrounding trees. Still nothing. The forest was silent again. I locked the door and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I thought I heard whispers. Indistinct. Coming from inside the cabin. By morning, I convinced myself it was paranoia. It had to be. I was alone in a place I wasn't used to. I spent the day exploring. The woods were dense, misty in some places. Everything seemed normal. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. That night, the noises returned. Footsteps outside, whispers in the dark, a tapping sound on the window, slow, soft, like fingernails. I didn't dare look. Hours later, I woke to a shadow moving across the room. Tall, thin, leaning slightly. It paused near the fire, then it disappeared. I wanted to leave, but my car was far. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The next day, I tried to distract myself. I explored further into the woods. I found a small stream. The water was clear, but the reflection looked wrong. I saw something standing behind me in the water. I spun around. Nothing. By evening, I felt cornered. The cabin didn't feel safe anymore. I slept with the door locked, flashlight in hand. Around midnight, I woke to scratching, not outside, but inside the walls. Slow, deliberate, as if something was moving behind the wood. I called out, no answer. Then I heard breathing again, right beside the bed. I rolled over, shining the flashlight toward the sound. A figure crouched in the corner. It had no face, just darkness where a face should be. I screamed and threw the blanket at it. It vanished. I spent the next morning packing frantically. As I left, I noticed something on the doorstep. A small handprint. Not mine, not human. I drove for hours, checking the rearview mirror. Nothing followed. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. Weeks later, I tried to go back. The cabin was gone. The clearing had returned to forest. No trail, no sign anyone had ever been there. Sometimes, at night, I hear whispers, low, uneven breathing, scratches at the walls. I never stay alone in the woods again, but that wasn't the end. I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw. The faceless figure, the scratches in the walls, the soft knocking. Months later, I spoke to another hiker who'd been in the same area. He told me he'd stayed in a cabin near the same forest. He had similar experiences. Footsteps outside, cold spots in the middle of the night, things moving inside the cabin. He said he woke one morning to find all the furniture moved, not just shifted slightly, completely rearranged, and a single handprint on the doorframe. I realized I wasn't imagining it. Something was there. A year passed. I told a few close friends, but most laughed it off. Until one of them went alone in the woods. She stayed in a small cabin. I didn't want to go near it. But she called me the second night. Her voice shook. She said footsteps were outside. The scratching was on the walls, and she could hear whispers in the dark. She left immediately in the middle of the night. Said the figure had appeared in her room, faceless, crouched, just like I described. We never went back. Now, even today, if I walk in dense woods, I feel it. The weight of someone watching. Even in daylight, I catch shadows moving just outside my vision, always at the edge of the forest. I've read stories online. Other people report cabins that vanish, footsteps at night, figures with no face. Some say it's the forest itself, a living thing, watching, testing, hunting. I don't know if that's true. I just know what I experienced. Every time I close my eyes at night, I see that figure, crouched in the corner, faceless, waiting. Sometimes, I swear I hear scratching on the walls of my own apartment. Even with lights on, even in the city, it never goes away. I learned the hard way that some places are not meant to be alone. Some places remember every footstep, every visitor, every moment. And if you ever find yourself deep in a forest, alone, in a cabin far from anywhere, listen carefully, because sometimes the forest isn't empty, and sometimes what watches you doesn't want to be seen.